So welcome, everyone. It's just a pleasure to be here. It really is a joy to be able to be here with my colleague, Senator Pete Harckham. I'm Senator Shelley Mayer. Together, we decided we wanted to host a really special tribute to our friend, Assemblyman David Buchwald, who stepped down from the Assembly and is just been a fantastic colleague to both of us in our overlapping districts and in our professional and personal lives and our political lives. And tonight is an opportunity for so many of his supporters and friends to talk a little bit about what an enormous impact he has had on the state and our gratitude for his service and of course our faith in the next steps of whatever he takes. So I want to say thank you to begin with David, and to Lara, his wife. Thank you so much for being here and sharing him, because we all know that somebody shares in this political experience in terms of sacrifice, and you have done a great deal. And to your daughters, Anna and Amelia, who we have seen at many events, our best to them. I am going to, I have a lot to say about David as someone who sat next to David in the Assembly conference when he first started and through some very challenging times. And I always say that, you know, he's lovely and super smart and gets things done, but he is very courageous. And that's something that people do not know. He took two of the biggest issues that don't always get attention. I just want to point them out. One was when he first got there, he introduced a bill to remove the pensions from elected officials who betray the trust of their constituents by being convicted of crimes involving that betrayal. It was not popular, to say it nicely. It was not popular.
In Albany.
In Albany, it was very popular among regular people. They thought it was ridiculous that we didn't already have that. But he started that in 2013. And it was ultimately approved by the voters in 2017. Not everyone agreed, including in our conference, but David worked with the leadership. He worked with his colleagues. He found a way to work with the unions, and he actually got a big change done that people in our districts really wanted. The other thing of the big things, and here's 2 pages worth of what they call chapters. These are bills that were signed by the governor that David got in his short stint in the Assembly, was a bill that required that the tax returns of someone like former President Trump must be turned over to Congress if they were requested by a committee of Congress and they involved a New York State tax return. So the New York State was going to cooperate in forcing disclosure, if duly authorized, by a federal committee. That also was very contentious at the time. David stuck with it. And in 2019, that bill got signed. And it really changed the face and what's going to happen even going forward. So I talked about the big things and the courage. David was a very dedicated, hardworking legislator. He cared about the district. And so we have so many representatives from the district here today, and I'm sort of the MC. But I did want people to know that he took on hard battles, not the easy ones. And he stuck with them until he could find a resolution that could get through the process of 2 houses of the legislature, a governor who is a strong-minded person, and a constituency that was also very opinionated. And that is the kind of person and courage and persistence and smarts that David Buchwald had, and I've always had great respect for that. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Senator Pete Harckham. We overlap in David's district, in our Senate districts. And then I'm going to call on a number of our colleagues who are here. Thank you all for being here. And I know people are watching on Facebook, to say brief remarks, no more than 2 minutes, because there's too many nice things to be said about David Buchwald. So with that, Senator Harckham.
Thank you, Senator Mayer. Thank you to you and your team for putting this together. And I think that's an oxymoron, elected officials and brief remarks. So we'll see how that goes this evening. But thank you so very much. My remarks are going to be brief in the sense that I think David knows how I feel. What's more important, I think, is that there are dozens and dozens and dozens of people watching this on Facebook, silently paying tribute to you because of the lives you've touched in your career. And to me, that is the more powerful voice than mine. It's great. Our colleagues are on. You've touched all of their lives. You've impressed them. You've worked with them collaboratively. But it's all of the people who are watching on Facebook tonight who are there because of you, because of your integrity, because of your intelligence, because of your strength. You know, Shelley mentioned the integrity portion. You know, the one thing that I would mention is David's ferociousness. I would not want to be in the seat of a utility company executive during a power outage on a conference call with David Buchwald. I would rather be at the dentist getting a root canal than that. And I say that with great affection because there is no more dogged advocate for good policy, common sense, and getting the power restored in a sensible way than David was. And you know, David, it's just always a pleasure to work with you. Your upbeat attitude was always inspiring. As Shelley mentioned, a host of accomplishments that were tangible and real and will outlive all of us. Excuse me, but mostly it's the lives you've touched with your work and the lives you will continue to touch. So congratulations, this night is for you, and we're going to miss you. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Pete.
So I want to acknowledge, I know other people will be on Facebook and not here, but our new colleague, Senator Elijah Reichlin-Melnick, has joined as well. He's now one of our Westchester senators here, and I know that Assemblyman Steve Otis told me he was joining, and I assume some of your other Assembly colleagues. I'm going to introduce who's here so people know. We were hoping George Latimer, our county executive, would be here. He's talking about COVID. Unfortunately, that takes precedence over you, David, tonight. He may make it. My friend, Assemblyman Gary Pretlow, the Dean of the Westchester County Assembly Delegation, is here. Now Assemblyman Chris Burdick, who was a supervisor of the town of Bedford when you represented Bedford. Mayor Tom Roach of the city of White Plains. Supervisor Peter Parsons from Lewisboro. Supervisor Marion Carr from Bedford. Supervisor Michael Shalero from North Castle. Supervisor Kevin Hansen from Pound Ridge. The president is coming of the Westchester Putnam Central Labor Body, Tom Carey. The political director of the Sierra Club, our friend Ed Berry. From Common Cause, the executive director, Susan Lerner. Our friend, very good friend, Arlene Rice, the executive assistant and liaison to the board at the New York School for the Deaf. From CWA 1103, the secretary treasurer and true activist, Joe Mayhew. And from GROW, our very good friends in the communities with disabilities, Stacey Osborne, the director, a great friend and advocate. And if I left someone off, I don't think I did. With that, I'm going to turn over to our colleague, Assemblyman Gary Pretlow.
Oh, well, thank you, Senator. I'll call you Senator. Even, you know, you senators call yourselves senators. We Assemblymen just have names. I'm Gary Pretlow. And good evening, everyone. And congratulations, David. You know, in November 6, 2012, the 93rd Assembly District sent the powerhouse up to Albany. And when David first got there, it was just him and Lara. And now he's leaving us a few years later. But Anna and Amelia have been added to the crew. And I wanted to congratulate you. How'd you find time to have 2 kids? Because with all the work that you do. You know, Shelley had previously mentioned some of the things that you had done. But I think it was called the New York Truth Act. That was the bill that required that if a congressional delegation or a congressional committee requested tax returns from the state, that the state was duty bound to send it to Congress. I think, though, because you're a fantastic tax attorney, that you kind of hurt yourself because our former president needs a tax attorney. And, you know, I understand, according to Giuliani, he pays big money, he gets $20,000 a day. But because you did this to him, I don't think he's going to call you. But don't fret.
No price would be enough. Sorry.
but don't fret. I say one of the things that I find most admirable about David, even though I know he was a physics major in college, which I didn't know before, is that he went to Harvard Law. And I know many individuals that have gone to Harvard and graduated from Harvard, and they never seem to have a conversation where there's not a paragraph that includes that they graduated from Harvard. David never did that. David never once in any conversations that I've had with him or around him, mentioned that he was a Harvard grad. So Dave, I want to just congratulate you on that you're not snooty like a lot of your collegiate colleagues, okay? But I know I only have 2 minutes. So I just want to congratulate you and wish you well into the future. I know big things are ahead of you. You're still a young guy, and you're going to do great things in the future. And don't forget about us. I'm down here in Mount Vernon. You're up there in the White Plains area, but we're not too far apart. And when this whole COVID fiasco is over, we got to sit down and have a drink or have lunch or something. Okay, so congratulations, David.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you so much. And I do want to acknowledge Supervisor Ivy Poole of Newcastle would be here, but she has a police reform committee. We know that is very pressing. And Florence McHugh from the Westchester Putnam Central Labor Council wanted me to shout out her strong admiration for you as well. I'm going to skip to Supervisor Mike Shalero of North Castle, who I appreciate your joining us tonight, Mike.
Thanks, Shelley. Appreciate it. I'll be brief. David knows how I feel about him, but a lot of you haven't heard how I feel about him, so I can share it with you. In my mind, David is the consummate elected official, right? He knows when politics ends and governing begins, and he's done that for our town and all of his constituency. I can only speak for some of the things I've seen in our town. And one of the things that impressed me about him, and Shelley mentioned this before, about some of those real heavy lift items that he took care of, that a lot of people were looking. But the thing that impressed me about David is he did a lot of things that he didn't have to do when nobody was looking, or very few people were looking. If there was a meeting that we might have in town that one of my colleagues might have once a month, there might be 3 or 4 people there. He went. He knew it was important to the people that were there, and he knew it was important to how he was going to help us. To flash forward now, all the things that he did for us in our town, all the things that he secured upstate, in Albany for us. Everybody knows David's path this year, and he made a terrific run for Congress, and it didn't work out the way he wanted. A lot of people would just kind of fold their tents and move on. So the analogy I can use is a baseball player who's in the last year of their contract that's going to do everything they can to put up good stats because they want to sign that big contract next year. Well, David's term was ending, but he acted like he had to do everything he could to make sure he kept helping the people in North Castle. And I never forget, he called me on a September day, late in the afternoon, and there were things that certainly Shelley knows, George Latimer knows when he was our state senator, of funding that we needed in our town for state roads, et cetera. And this is in addition to all the other things that David provided funding for, parking lots and community centers, et cetera. And he called me and said, we kept pushing, I kept pushing, Senator Mayer kept pushing, and we've got a ridiculously amount of millions of dollars to fix roads that I've been trying to get fixed for years. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to keep fighting. And that's right to the end. So none of these things, nobody was watching that. If he didn't do that, nobody was watching. He just kept doing it because he knew what his job was. He cared deeply about it. And it was more important for him to do his job the way it should be done as an elected official versus just mailing it in. And it just proved exactly that he serves for the right reasons. Right to the last day, he serves for the right reasons. So, again, David knows how I feel about him. Maybe Lara learned a little bit more about how I feel about him. She probably knows. Now all of you know even clearer. I know pretty certainly that David has left office, but I'm not sure we've heard the last of him. And can't wish him nothing but the best in the future, and anything we could ever do or I could ever do to help him, he knows just to ask. So Senator, thanks for letting me go early. I may have to cut out a little bit early, but David, just can't thank you enough for all you've done and setting the right example and being a right role model for people like me to show us how it should be done. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I have people saying they want to get on, and it's on Facebook. I have to let them know. All these supporters of yours want to make sure you are acknowledged by them. And from Lewisboro, I know he's been on for a while. Thank you, Peter, Supervisor Peter Parsons, another part of David's Assembly District. And I think Pete Harckham Senate District. Right, Pete?
Yes. My hometown.
Okay, all right.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm really happy to be allowed to speak this evening. To me, 60 bills, yes. But the thing which really...
470, Pete, but it's who's counting.
470, sorry if I didn't get it right. The news release I read said 60. I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries.
But what stands out the most to me is the battle he fought to take pensions away from corrupt government officials. That was so against the grain of the politicians in Albany that everybody seemed to be sure that once you'd sort of made a fuss about it, you would go away. But you didn't go away. You kept on at it. You pushed and you pushed and you pushed and you got it. We're going to miss you. But please do not abandon government. You have succeeded in something remarkable. You have made government honorable. And that isn't always true of people in government. I wish it were, but it isn't. You have succeeded in that. And I really hope you will find a way either back to elected office or simply to run something big in government. You know, there's a guy down in Washington who needs some support.
We love White Plains, though, so it's, you know, but
Well,
thanks, Pete. It means a lot for you to say that.
Thank you very much. And good health.
Oh, Peter, you brought the wine. I should have done that. I have a
Well,
glass.
I'm at home.
Did you
so
bring enough for everybody on the Zoom?
Yeah, everyone should get some.
I've got a couple of cases here.
Okay, we're coming over. It's socially distanced. But mentioning White Plains, and I know Mayor Roach is here, every time that David and I were in the White Plains schools, he made a point of saying how your girls were, you know, going to be in White Plains, and one is in White Plains schools already. And, you know, your commitment to the city, your commitment to the schools, your commitment to the community, the downtown community, which is really done so fantastically well and survived COVID. Thank you, Mayor Rich, for all your work. But White Plains is special, I know. So I'm turning it over to the Mayor of City of White Plains, my friend, Mayor Roach.
Thank you, Senator. It's my pleasure to be here with my friend David. And first of all, I want to say Donald Trump would never hire him because Donald Trump's one skill is picking the worst lawyers there are on the planet. And David's a very good lawyer, so that's not going to happen. But I met David for the first time after a council meeting. A young man came up to me after the meeting. Spoiler alert, it was David. To talk to me about an issue that had been we'd been discussing that night, and I think it involved stormwater or something like that. That was a little technical that most people don't understand. And right away, I'm talking to him like, oh, he gets it. So I was very impressed from the beginning. I was very pleased when I found he was going to run for council. And I was a council president when David came on the council, and we worked together on a lot of issues, and a lot of the things that you see that you like in White Plains, David worked on with us. And when he said he was going to run for assembly, I was sorry to see him go, but happy to have him in the assembly because he does the work, he knows the subject, and he is persistent. And that's what you need in Albany. And And as I think Mike said, the thing with David, never did I have a conversation with him on an issue where he was considering the political calculus of how he should vote. Always just what he thought was the right vote. And that's something that I really appreciate, because I think in the long run, that's your people recognize that in the long run, but it certainly makes it a more pleasant experience to work with someone. In the assembly, David was not only was he responsive, he was proactive. He would call me up and say, I just saw something I think you should know about. And it was really appreciated, because he, as I say, he knows how to pull the levers in Albany, and he's persistent, but his heart is in it. That's on top of that, his heart is in it. And I'm trying to stick to my 2 minutes. We just spoke the other day, and I said, I want to have a cup of coffee with you when it's responsible to do so. So hopefully that'll be soon. But I just want to say, I went, Laura, hello. I was at the wedding, everybody. So I don't know, but I feel it. And I have to reveal another honor that I'm going to call it an honor now. I'm not going to call it a burden anymore. David and I are big Met fans, and we're both raised by big Met fans. So we have that. It was a burden to some extent, but it was, as you know,
The
whenever they
Yankee
do,
fan agrees with you in my household, that's for sure.
I know that came up at the wedding, but I will say that whenever they do win, it's amazing. Okay, it doesn't happen that much, but when it's always amazing. So David, great friend. David's staying in White Plains. Thank you, and you know, I wish you well. And we're gonna have that cup of coffee shortly. I'm sure we can figure out a way to do it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much, Mayor Roach. And James Dodge III, please thank David from the Pound Ridge Volunteer Fire Department. He has helped us keep safe with the grants he secured for us. And I have a list of those kinds of things that we didn't even get to talk about today. Funding a substance abuse counselor at Fox Lane High School and later Fox Lane Middle School. Sponsored work with elementary and middle school students to provide thousands of Valentines. I remember that, to area veterans, including Montrose VA Hospital and active duty members stationed overseas. I mean, there's a long list of things that I haven't gotten to that are the non-big deal, but for those of us here in elected office, we know that's a very important part of being responsive to your constituents. David really has been quite exceptional. So I'm jumping around. I'm going to go to Assemblyman Chris Burdick and then Supervisor Kevin Hansen. I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time. So Chris Burdick, our friend.
Thank you, Shelley, and thank you, Pete, for putting this all together. And, you know, David's significant accomplishments and legacy have been so wonderfully described. And you'll hear, I'm sure, even more. And I truly have a significant task to measure up to come even close to those levels of accomplishments. And, you know, I think one of the common themes in all of this is you've heard his integrity, his character, but also you'll hear about his compassion. And I think that Arlene Rice will be talking about that on behalf of New York School for the Deaf. And, you know, that runs through everything that David had done from the very day that he walked into the assembly. And, you know, Mike told this story about how he kept going, he kept pushing. And even though he knew that he was not going to continue on, he was getting funds for roads. Well, I'll tell a little story about a constituent in the town of Bedford, and she was having a devil of a time getting her license renewed. In her 80s, had tremendous time finding a birth certificate, where David personally got on the phone to call another state's registry and figure it all out. And this was when he knew that he was leaving. And that just shows his character, his caring, and how to the very last day in which he was in office, he still was continuing to serve his district. So his impeccable character, integrity, and compassion, that guided him throughout his entire years of service in the assembly. And I'm especially grateful for his help to me and in my staff in succeeding him in office, the countless hours that he took with me and with my staff, always would return a phone call, take whatever time was needed. Now, David has received and will be continuing to receive tokens of our esteem for him. And on behalf of the delegation, Westchester County Assembly delegation, I have a proclamation that's in process, David, and it will be on behalf of all your colleagues that are in the Westchester County delegation in the Assembly. So, David, thank you so much for everything that you have done. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you to Chris and to all my Assembly colleagues. And Chris, I left you a few extra frames in the office. So I know that, the Assembly budget for these things is not so huge. The Senate puts us to shame, the county puts us to shame, but I'll be very honored to be a recipient of a leftover frame from the State Assembly. And thank you for putting together the proclamation that goes inside.
I want to say that from Senator Harckham and myself, there's a framed commendation, which I dropped off at David's house this morning, along with the commendation award, which is very nice. See, it doesn't have a frame. Oh, it does have a frame. That, really is an acknowledgement of how valuable, oh yes, that nice award, little award, how important you are to us. And Chris left out our fight over 684, where, as Pete said, you didn't want to be on the receiving end of David Buchwald during that meeting about 684 not being paid for 20 something years. I can tell you, because we were there. It wasn't fun, but we got it done. And that was
Sure did.
persistence. We got it done. So with
Thanks,
that,
all, and thanks to you and Pete again for that very nice proclamation and award.
oh, it's our
Great.
pleasure. And as Supervisor Kevin Hansen, Town of Pound Ridge.
Yeah, thank you, Senators, for inviting me to this. I first just want to thank David for all the support he's given to the Town of Pound Ridge. He supported me right from the beginning initially. As most of you know, I was not in the political environment here of Westchester. I just came out of the blue and decided one day about 4 years ago, to step up and run for town supervisor. And I'm very appreciative. David came to Pound Ridge, took the time to get to know me. He took the time to understand why I was running and what I wanted to accomplish. And he endorsed me, not because I had a letter behind my name or any of that, but just because he took the time to understand what I was trying to do. And so, he's done a tremendous job for Pound Ridge, as you heard earlier, with Sam Dodge and getting money. And it's more than just getting money from the state. I mean, clearly, at a local government level here, any additional funds we get help offset the burdens we have on our taxpayers. But, I'm just going to go back to the utilities here real quick. It was instrumental what he did after the storms, Quinn and Riley, the snowstorms here, to form that committee there of United Westchester. And I greatly appreciate that he offered me to join that executive committee, because you jump ahead in 2 years, the recommendations that we were able to lay out and put in place, and David advocated for and pushed hard, we were able to see really tangible change within NYSEG, to be able to be much more responsive to the local levels, to be much more responsive to our constituents when it comes down to having power outages, because David understood from the beginning that, NYSEG, we're at Westchester County, we're at the end of the NYSEG line, just like Con Ed in Westchester County. You're pretty much at the end of it. That's why we're constantly being ignored in this area when it comes to storms. And David recognized that. And, we saw those recommendations from 2 years ago, and we put them out there, didn't know how much it would do, but I'm telling you, they stuck and it helped. And the residents of Pound Ridge are much more better served now. From the utility companies, we got their attentions, and we couldn't have done it without his tenacity on this. And so, David, I appreciate it. And I just want to follow up with everybody else. I too agree. I hope you stay in government. I've been consulting the government for 30 years, and, city and state level. And I can tell you, they need people like you that are passionate and have the skills and, will, really follow through on things. And, I think you'd be a great asset, both at the state level, or the federal level, and either elected or in any other role. I think you'd be a great asset, but again, that's your decision. I'll support you one way or the other. And so again, thank you personally for all the support you've given me over these last few years.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for your friendship.
Hey, thank you, David.
That's so nice. It's nice that you're all bringing up these other parts that we didn't get to of your successes, particularly utilities. Yes, that's another place. That's quite the powerhouse. Supervisor Marianne Carr, our friend, formerly on the board, now the supervisor of the town of Bedford.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Senator Mayor and Senator Harckham. I'm just delighted to be here tonight to give my expression of appreciation to David. He is all of the things that everyone has said he is, in terms of just being the most dedicated, with the highest of character and integrity. Although I'm older than David, I consider David a mentor. He just has inspired me. And anytime I've had an issue that I just was bothered by, or just needed some consulting advice, I could turn to David, and I just, always trusted his judgment. He always, if he wasn't available, he would get right back to me on every single matter. He never left a phone call unanswered or an email unanswered. And so it's easy for me to support David. It was just so easy to see what a public servant looked like, because David was a perfect model of a public servant. I mean, his constituents, that's who he cared about. He cared about the people in his district. He wanted to make sure that he was doing everything that he possibly could to create and make a better quality of life for them in whatever way he could. And just the things that he took on was just so impressive in Albany. I mean, these were things that, assembly people do not take on. You look for people at the federal level to take on those types of issues. And David was not afraid. He was courageous. And again, he was like one of my biggest motivators for just, pushing forward, trying to make sure that I always thought of the people first and put the people first. And I want to thank you, David, for your commitment to Bedford and to me as a friend. And I hope that you will find a place in government, because government needs you. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne, and congratulations again on becoming Bedford Town Supervisor.
Yes, fantastic. Okay, now we're happily, I guess, for the rest of the world, moving past us elected officials to the people who are active on the ground on the issues. And we have some fantastic advocates here. My friend, really our friend, Tom Carey, who's been our friend for a long time, president of the Westchester Putnam Central Labor Body, and a friend of David's. So Tom, we see you there.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks for having me on. It's so good to see so many familiar faces, good friends of David. I know everybody on the call this evening, and we've all worked closely with David. I want to say hello to Lara. I wish your children were on the Zoom conference as well, because we had a lot of fun back in October when we honored David with our Outstanding Leadership Award from the Westchester Putnam Central Labor Body. And that is truly because David is such a good friend of labor. As a labor leader, I see my good friend and my vice president, Joe Mayhew. I'm not going to steal all of Joe's thunder, because I know Joe's got a lot to say about David as well. But David is truly, he's a very sincere man. I know early on when we first met, I said, with a name like Buchwald, you should be congressman one day. And, we kept that march going right up to the last minute, right, David? And it's unfortunate he's not our congressman today, but, I'm sure brighter days are ahead for David. As a labor leader here in Westchester, anytime we ever reached out to David, he was there. And he's not one of these elected officials, and not any one of you that I see on this screen tonight are, but David was not one of those guys that was there just for a picture and just to show up to to get a snapshot with friends. He truly, in his heart, was there to look out for the working men and women of all of his constituents all throughout the county and all throughout the state for that matter, because it didn't matter where you wanted David to show up. He was there, and he was there to walk picket lines. He was there for rallies. He was there to support other candidates that were friends of labor. So David, keep up the good work. And I'm glad this Zoom conference is, an honor to him, because we're not saying goodbye. We're just saying we'll see you down the road somewhere, I'm sure, because I know, David, we all have aspirations for you, David, and we'll always stand behind you, whatever you decide to do. I wish you and your family the very best, my friend. Thank you.
Sounds good, Tom. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Best to you.
Pete, I don't want to, I don't want to hog the show here. Feel free to jump in and,
All good, Shelley.
okay, all right.
Thank you.
I would just say that, we have been very fortunate in the Westchester delegation, Senate and Assembly delegation, to have this fantastic working relationship across, regardless of where we represent, and we move around. Pete wasn't in the Senate, and we're thrilled he's there and just got reelected. I was in Yonkers. Now I go all the way to Bedford. We all work together, and we really did and continue to work very closely together. I think it benefits the people of Westchester as a whole, that we have a committed delegation, and with Gary's leadership in the Assembly and Andrea in the Senate, we are a very strong delegation. David was a big part of it. So the point that you made, Tom, we're looking forward to big things going forward, definitely. So next I have Ed Berry, Political Director of the Sierra Club.
All right, thank you, Shelley. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm a little thumbs when it comes to computers sometimes. The one phrase that comes to my mind, Ms. Carr just used, and that's public servant. It's a phrase that sort of went out of fashion for a variety of reasons, I guess. But it just fits David. It just does. I could talk about his 100% environmental record across the board, like every year on every issue. But that would almost be boring. It was like, here we go. Oh, David got 100% again, did he? It was people in my other allied groups would go, "Are you sure he got 100%?" And I go, "Yeah, you got 100%. You got 100%." I'm going to tell a quick story, and I'll be within my 2 minutes. Don't worry. I'm Irish, but I'm quick. When I first got to know David, there was the thing about the electric cars. Now they had a facility in David's district. 34 jobs were on the line. Chris Christie torpedoed the whole operation in Jersey, so went down the tubes in Jersey. Our governor was about to do the same thing. He will never admit it now, but that's what he was going to do. He was going, we don't need that. The car dealerships, for their own reasons, were like really putting pressure. David said, no, we're not going to do that. He got together. I couldn't believe how much media was there. Now, this is a guy who was just in the office. He just waltzed in, he's brand new. And I was there, if there are going to be 3 of us in the Tesla dealership. And all of a sudden there's ABC News, NBC News.
We were live on CNBC. Yeah,
exactly. I still don't know where you got all these guys and girls from, but you got them. And they were just popping up. They were like, I said, what? I didn't even come with prepared remarks. I figured, well, yeah, we'll do what we can here, and I'll get my people writing letters to the governor and sending him emails, and we'll put it was amazing. It was amazing. And it worked. It worked, because here was this brand new minted assembly person, and the governor got a little bit, I'll say it because I'm not in office, got a little bit of a bloody nose, and he stepped back and he went, oh, well, maybe we, and it was fairly quickly in political terms that he did this. He stepped back and said, yeah, well, maybe we should think of Tesla and keep them alive and stuff. And David's, he kept saying to people, well, there are 34 jobs here. These are 34 jobs that support 34 families in my district. Now, nobody can argue with that. And then there was the idea of the new technology, all the environmental issues. It was masterfully done, masterfully done.
And yet Elon Musk has not sent me a commission since then.
Well,
It seemed like a small
I know
token.
the poor man's a little erratic. I mean, he's a genius, but he's not a
So you might
detail
not
guy.
like my anti-Trump stuff. That's okay.
Yeah, he probably got lost. Yep, yep. So again, I'll echo what everybody else said. I expect that we will be hearing about and from David for years from now. I'm not sure in what form, but we are going to be hearing from him and about him. And I'm looking forward to that. Thank you again, David.
Thank you very much, Ed.
I just want to add another here. Barbara Di Giacinto, who's on the board in the town of North Castle. She said, Mike Shalero said it all, but I would like to add, and I want to read this. He was a great friend and partner to the town of North Castle, and politics never entered a discussion. And I'm sure that Barbara and David had their disagreements, and as I do sometimes with Barbara, but she's a fantastic colleague in the world of government, getting stuff done. And that's what David did. And whenever there was a need or problem that only he could address. And I think that is your reputation. You didn't let politics get in the way. You were about doing the work that people needed. So thank you, Barbara, for making sure we heard that.
Thanks, Barbara.
Common Cause, Susan Lerner, our friend Susan Lerner. Thank you, Susan, for joining us. You're muted, you're muted, you're muted.
Sorry, couldn't be more pleased and honored to be asked to speak. When the phone rings and it's David Buchwald, I stop doing whatever else I'm doing because I know that I have to give him my undivided attention. He is going to hold me to all of the details. He is going to challenge any ideas which I have and demand that I give him my full attention for the wonderful aspirational things that he took on that others would not be willing to do. The pension bill has been mentioned. David worked on that tirelessly. And when he first brought it up, I was like, wow, this is great. A kindred soul, somebody who's going to throw himself at the wall. And, it's a really hard thing, to make this happen in Albany. But let's see what happens. And through persistence, through real attention to detail and incredible integrity, David really made the case for that bill and skillfully worked it through both houses, would not take no for an answer, would not take politics for an answer. And this is, in all honesty, a very rare quality. I knew whenever I was talking to David that I would get a straightforward, thoughtful, nuanced answer, always right on top of what the issue was, not pulling any punches and telling me what the straight story was. I am going to miss him as a partner in the legislature. And I agree with everybody that I know he's going to go on to do other wonderful things. And I wonder if he's interested in being involved in the good government side. So we'll have to have that discussion. Thank you, David, for your service, and looking forward to many detailed, nuanced conversations in the future.
Thanks so much, Susan. Really appreciate it.
Okay, we have a few more and then we get to hear from David, but these are all important. And so Arlene Rice, for New York School for the Deaf, executive assistant and liaison to the board. That's not, she's also just like the force of New York School for the Deaf in our political world. So
only because of all of you. We, for those of you who don't know who we are the oldest school for the deaf in New York State, second oldest in the nation, and the only school for the deaf in Westchester County. But we have students who come from all over. Some of them live in Assemblyman Pretlow's district. We have a couple in Senator Harkman's district, many in Shelley's. But I just want to talk a little bit about David and how when he first came to the assembly, and we invite all of the legislators to our graduation. And I think that was my first memory of you. And he came in, and I know all of our legislators, thank God. And fortunately for us, you all know us and the work we do with our deaf children. And I don't know if anybody noticed, but when Shelley talked about me earlier, I think it was you, Assemblyman Burdick, David went like this. That is how we clap for deaf people, because they can't hear it, they have to see it. So you know that when David visited our school, he paid attention. And I just want to tell you that although I had a written speech, because being among all of you made me very nervous, every last Friday of June, we have our graduation, and it's very special. And David didn't come because he was going to get his picture taken. He wouldn't get any votes because some of the kids' parents weren't there. But he came, and he always would pay attention, and he'd always come over and ask me a couple of questions. And then he'd always, even though he couldn't sign, those kids knew he was one of those important elected people. He's an assemblyman, and many of you have been to the celebration, so you know. But what touched my heart was that he'd go over and smile, and he has that warm, and I'm probably going to cry because those are the kids, but he has that warm, genuine smile, and he'd shake a kid's hand, and they thought they were on top of the world. And it brought such joy to them. And every year when we had our legislative breakfast for all the legislators that come to the school, David would pay attention, and he would just be there. He looked happy to always be with us, and that always meant so much to me. And if we'd see him in Albany, we could be in the hall, he would come over to say hello to the kids or to our superintendent and all of us. And we know really that you supported all the bills and all the support that New York School for the Deaf has gotten from our Westchester delegation and those beyond, like Gary Pretlow and Senator Harckham. We appreciate all that you do, but David, we're going to miss you. So we hope you'll still come to our graduation. Bring your wife, bring your kids, and wherever your journey takes you, always remember that you made a difference in the lives of our deaf children. And here's to you, David.
Thank you, Arlene. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you all for all you do.
Thank you, Arlene. Our friend Joe Mayhew, he's always a powerful, be in a rally with Joe and you get excited. Secretary Treasurer of CWA, Communication Workers of America, 1103.
Okay, we're going to see if this works out because I'm going to share a screen here, and the host, you'll have to let me be the host to share.
Okay, Emiliana.
We had it all worked out.
We had it worked out. Okay.
There we go. There we go. All right.
Joe's muscling his way in as usual.
Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, can you see that? Can you see that picture?
We see a leaf.
Something's not right. Let me just open up here. Emiliana, I think we're gonna have to have a technical difficulty here. Let's see if I can do it again. How's that?
There you go.
There you go.
There we go.
Oh.
All right. 2 minutes starts now, though. Right, look, from this picture, I think there's one thing you can gauge about how long I've known David Buchwald. See, my son in the middle there is now 25 years old and a certified teacher. So we've been around a while together. I exist in a world where we call our fellow CWA members sisters and brothers. We refer to our community allies that we work with, our community organizations that we work with as allies. And we tend to call the elected who support us friends. Now, this Zoom room is full of a lot of brothers, sisters, allies, and friends. But I want to talk about David. I met David Buchwald while he was still a White Plains Common Council. Now, I met him because one day, quite out of the blue, I got a call from this young councilman telling me he wanted to run for assembly and wanted to talk about labor. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't know how he got my number. But we met and we spoke on several occasions. And quite frankly, we formed a friendship. It's easy to form a friendship with David. And I came to discover that David wasn't looking to learn how to navigate labor. He wasn't looking for the right answers to give to labor. He truly wanted to understand union workers. And I was, quite frankly, a little skeptical, yet I was optimistic about this young guy. So we at CWA supported him, and he got elected to the New York State Assembly in 2012. Now, that same year that David entered the New York State Assembly, CWA members were involved in a labor dispute that at this point had lasted about 6 months. Now, to encourage a settlement, we went on a short strike. We picketed stores and we hand-billed the train stations. And one cold February morning at 6 a.m., while we were hand-billing the White Plains train station, David Buchwald walks up to me. Now I'm looking at him thinking like, geez, man, it's a cold, cold morning. Where are you headed this early? He goes, I'm not headed anywhere. I came here to meet you. I want to help handbill. And at that moment, we knew our instincts about David Buchwald were correct. See, as a newly elected assemblyman, David, and this is in his freshman year, alone supported us on 3 major telecom bills and 2 major healthcare bills. And over the next 8 years as an assembly member, he was at every single CWA picket line, every single CWA labor dispute, adding his voice to our volume. Now, look, I don't want to make anyone think that David was a pushover. He was far from that. In fact, if you wanted David to do something with you, you had best have done your homework and been able to prove that it was the right thing to do. But once you did that, what I'll tell you about David was he jumped in with both feet. So today, because of his dedication, years of dedication and support to the CWA membership, CWA is proud to call David Buchwald our friend, our ally, and our brother.
That's nice.
David, you have our best wishes, our deepest thanks, and more importantly than anything, our most sincere respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Your words are very touching, and of course, most important honorific I can have is to be a friend, and you are a great friend, and we appreciate your words. Thanks.
So not last, because you're going to get to go, David, but our very good friend, Stacy Osborne, the executive director of GROW, who many of us have worked with over the years, who's been a fantastic advocate on some voices that really need strong advocacy on behalf of those with developmental disabilities particularly. So Stacy, your turn.
Thank you
for
so
your
much.
patience.
No, okay. Thank you so much, Senator Mayer, Senator Harckham had to leave. Joe said friends, and we've been, our families, and we have been very fortunate here in Westchester to have so many friends and community support. And when we heard about David, it's one of those funny things. We have to guard our nonprofit status. So while you're elected, I can't say nice things about you. That's my excuse, Gary. And we really want to say thank you and greatly appreciate, really the support of listening to us, because, so many of our families, we don't get the feedback. And I remember David, and I'll tell my one story. We try to frame it properly because we want to, but during this crisis, I was thinking the other day, many of our families have had to take care of their loved ones. Now it's the vaccination. Where do we end up? And David helped us so much. We were, dealing with a guardianship issue. And maybe nobody knows, and this has been said about him before, we went to him, we went on our senators, he was on the committee, and we were not getting through. People were not listening to the voices of families. And we were here so worried, and we turned up and we saw and we heard that David heard us. He took a vote. I normally don't use the word courage about politicians because I don't want to get them in trouble with their leadership and committee chairs and parties, but it was so courageous and so important because it amplified the voices and got people to listen to us. And so many people, so many of our families, they don't understand the process. They only know, but it is really, we really do appreciate it. And it is so, so important. And one of the things that people don't understand is I see our public officials, but I remember, being with David, and I said, it's such a commitment to be away from your family. So we also want to thank your family because we're a family organization. To be in Albany to work so hard, to be out in public, they're sacrificing as much as you. And, our families know about that. So David, I can only say thank you so much. Please stay engaged and involved, but really thank you for being a friend, not just a great public servant, great assemblyman, but we really, from the bottom of our hearts, appreciate it. You also get that from Barbara Mesa, our legislative chairperson, who would not have stopped talking as I'm going to do, because she goes on and on about you, but we love you all and thank you.
Thank you, Stacy, and it's been a pleasure working with you and so many other great advocates who make Westchester a wonderful place to represent. So keep up the good work.
Okay, David, now we're up to you.
Oh, wow.
We made it to the end of our fantastic group.
Well, let me first begin by thanking you, Shelley, and Senator Harckham, and Shelley, your staff, Miliana and Rachel, for helping put together what is just an overwhelming evening. And I want to thank everyone who said very nice words. I see it's being recorded, so I'm going to take privilege of requesting a recording so that someday I can watch this in retirement and show to grandkids and all those good things. That'll be so touching. But I know that each of you, the reason that you're all invited to say words is, not just because you've been a colleague and someone I've had the pleasure of working with. That through you, there are so many other people who I've had the privilege of having the honor of either improving their lives, helping them in some way or another. And whether you're an elected official or advocate or a union leader, or someone who just cares about our community, it has been a real pleasure to work with all of you. And that work won't change; it'll just shift into something different. But really, I got into this to help people and to actually solve problems. And all of you are expressing the fact that whenever there was a problem that was yours, of course, I was very happy to work with you on that. But so many of you are effective advocates because you brought me issues that were affecting folks that brought them to you, and then I was able to be your partner in getting things done. And I don't think that spirit of wanting to seeing a problem and wanting to do something about it, that's left me at all. There are plenty of folks who are good at griping about what's wrong in the world, or noticing something, but then walking on by. I can tell you, and it's only been 3 weeks since I haven't formally been an assembly member, but some of you have already, in a very polite way, still gotten contacts from parent David Buchwald or White Plains resident David Buchwald, or just fellow who still cares about the 8 other great communities I represented. These are things that haven't left me, but I am, just so humbled by the fact that you've taken time of your evenings, whether as participants or viewers on Facebook or otherwise. And I know some of you have texted me during this. I'll respond to those texts later, and I really appreciate them. It has been a tremendous honor to represent the 132,000 true bosses that I had as constituents in the assembly, and more broadly to touch well beyond all of Westchester County, Lower Hudson Valley, but also folks around New York. And every once in a while, yes, we get some national media attention, and that was great when it's needed to solve an issue. But I also know that if you go into these jobs, as some folks do, because it's about promoting yourself or just being able to have the issue as opposed to solving it, then you're not really going to get as much done as you possibly could. And I can look back on my 8 years in the state assembly and 3 years on the White Plains Common Council before that, and really feel that I made a difference and I accomplished things, so that I don't leave with regrets of what else I could have done. There will always be more things, and thankfully we've got Chris Burdick as an assembly member, and Shelley Mayer is my state senator, and Pete Harckham representing the rest of the assembly district to continue working on things. And As I've said to Chris a few times, I left him an economic crisis and a pandemic to work on, among other things. So despite my work the last 6 months, helping get funding and solve constituent problems, there are enough things on your plates, that's for sure. And I wish you all the best who continue working, representing the great citizens of Westchester County. But I'll just say thank you to everyone who made this all possible, my constituents, and also, of course, tremendous thanks to my staff who are also often unseen and not doing things for their own aggrandizement, but really are, helped me help others. And I, can't express enough how appreciative I am to everyone who's been a part of that, whether you're, just an intern who's come in to the office for one summer and who somehow has now found me post-assembly time and is reconnecting. I hope I've inspired some folks, young or young at heart, to be involved in their communities. And I really feel everyone can find a way to be involved in giving back. And there's a lot of need for that, especially nowadays. So I commend to all of you, find ways to be involved in your community, however you define that, local community, school community, nation, or the world. And if in some way I was able to set an example, wonderful, but I will, I'm sure, be inspired by many things yet to come. And I really hope in some form or another that I'll continue to be able to give back to the community. Communities continue to give me so much. So thank you again, particularly to Shelley and her team, and to Pete for putting together this opportunity to reminisce. But certainly haven't written the final chapter, just closing one chapter on things, and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much, David. And absolutely, just next chapter, whatever it is, you're filled with love and support from so many people who think so well of you. There's so many lovely comments on Facebook. I hope you capture them as well.
I'll go online. I'll look at those soon enough.
So many people, and it's really been our pleasure. And I know Pete had to leave to do something in Peekskill, and we all have other Zooms, but this was really important to acknowledge how much you have contributed, and then how much faith we have in the next chapter, whatever it may be. We look forward to your continued presence, your emails to us, and calls and reminders of what we should do better and the challenges that you will give us. We know great things are in store. So it's my honor and pleasure to have worked on this with Pete and with my colleagues in government and my colleagues in the advocacy world too. You've clearly, obviously made a huge difference, and we look forward to more huge difference from you. So thank you. Thank you, Lara. Thank you for sharing, David, these years, for sitting next to me and commiserating together. And we got things done in the assembly, and we're just very, very fortunate. Congratulations, and thank you all.
Be
Oh,
well.
wait a minute. George got on. Got it in. He made it from COVID. You're at the very end, so we love having you, George.
Well, I just got on after being on a 1 hour thing. I was hoping to get out in time just to tell David what I've already told him in person, tell him in public. You're a fantastic friend. You've been a great public official, and with the last chapter has not yet been written. So stick around. My job is to stick around to see the last chapter. And I'm sure we're all going to be there. We're going to be very, very appreciative of your future public service as we are your present public service. So now I do have to Zoom off again to someplace. I'm glad I snuck it in time.
Thank you, George.
Thanks, George. And thanks for helping everyone stay safe. The most important thing.
Yes.
Guys,
Thanks.
take care. God bless.
Good night, all. That was a nice little cap off. Thank you,
Thanks again,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you to Emiliana very much, and Rachel. Thank you both.
Thanks, everybody. Good night. Stay safe.
Good night. Stay safe.
And good night to everyone on Facebook. Thanks for watching.
Good night, everyone.